If you haven't noticed, things are getting interesting in the ACC. We got 4 undefeated teams, and we only have about 3 or 4 games left in the conference, depending on who you are. Pitt seems to have made their way through the non-conference schedule. Clemson's kind of on the opposite end, but here we are with Clemson taking on Louisville on Saturday night. And of course, Jason Priester's here from the Clemson Insider to help us break it all down. Jason, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty well, man. How about you?
I'm good. 5-0 in the ACC, and none of them have been rather close. The last time out was, of course, this Virginia game, and I didn't see a ton of it. Saw a few plays here and there. 48-31 was the final, but it wasn't nearly that close. I know that Virginia had a interception that led to a touchdown to make a 10-3 lead at that point, and then Clemson just steamrolled from there, 5 consecutive touchdowns. So this team's playing pretty good ball, and I would think that 31 points isn't necessarily anything to be concerned with.
Unless you're talking about a lot of third and fourth string guys on the defensive side of the ball. It's 41-10 going into the fourth quarter, if I'm not mistaken. Clemson had taken full control of that thing, started rolling in a bunch of reserves, especially when it's got about midway through the fourth quarter. Started rolling in a bunch of reserves going deeper into the bench, and they gave up 2 quick touchdowns back-to-back there late in that game to make it seem a lot closer than it was. There was at one point, Dabo had already taken the first-string offense out off the field, and I think they went 3 and out, and then he puts the first team right back in because Virginia went and scored and pulled within 16, technically a 2-score game. So he puts them right back in, and they went down the field and scored. I think Klubnik hit T.J. Moore for a touchdown, and that kind of pushed it back out of reach. But the score is not quite indicative of how one-sided it was. They got a couple of touchdowns there in garbage time to make it look a little bit closer than it was.
Well, I took Virginia in 21 points, so thank Dabo for me for pulling those starters.
Yeah, Clemson's had some issues there. It's not just, go back to the North Carolina State game. That was another good example where Clemson had a big commanding lead going into the fourth quarter, and they pull out the stars and put in some of the backups on defense. And, it used to be, or it seemed like anyway, used to be a few years ago when Clemson would get up big and put in the backups. You were talking about it might not be guys that had played a lot, but it was guys that had been in the program for 2-3 years and kind of still sitting there biding their time. Now when Clemson goes that deep into their bench, you're talking about freshmen, redshirt freshmen. Not only do they not have experience on the field, they don't have much experience in the system or in the program. And it starts to show in some of the results, especially with some of those young DBs. A couple of them got picked on against Virginia, matter of fact. There's a lot of talent on the back end of that defense, especially those younger guys, but they're trying to grow some of them up in a hurry, it seems like. And they got a lot of film to coach off of now, after the first half of the season.
So in addition to that, what you just ran down with young DBs who aren't necessarily playing the meaningful snaps, but coming into some of these blowout games and getting torched at times, what would be the highlights and the sore spots on the defense thus far?
I think Clemson's pass defense it's not been what it was last year, but it's still been pretty solid. Their run defense is much improved over what it was the first few games, especially when Peter Woods got hurt and went down in the App State game and he missed, a big chunk of that game and the next 2 games and then only played like 20 snaps against Wake Forest. Clemson's the guys that were replacing him in the lineup, they were having some problems getting the edge set. Clemson was susceptible to some of those outside runs. And since he's been back, I think they've got a lot of that cleaned up. The Virginia quarterback who's dangerous with his legs, I think he had -7 rushing yards in that game. He outside of one 20-yard run he had on a 3rd and long, they kept him bottled up pretty much most of the game. Wake Forest didn't have a ton of success running the ball on them. I think they finished the game with 80-something yards. So that's been an area of improvement. But those linebackers, for the most part, to me, that's probably the brightest spot. Barrett Carter, Wade Wood-Ass, Sammy Brown's coming right along. When he gets in there, he makes plays. To me, that would probably be the thing that stands out the most about the defense at this point.
Kate Klubnik, 19 touchdowns and 9 picks last year, the last time I checked. And I think this is since the Virginia game, I think 20 touchdowns and 3 picks, and more so than that, just watching him play, which again, I watched the bigger games, the better games. So I saw the Georgia game, not a good one to watch. But since then, I got to say, I've been hit or miss on catching Clemson a few series here and there, but seems to be just flat out beyond the statistics, which are obviously indicative of the play, more confident, more sure of himself, more decisive.
Yeah, he's a guy that's playing with a lot of confidence. He had a lot of success against Virginia, and he was not, probably the last 2 games, he'd probably be the first to tell you he's not been as accurate as he could be. He had some throws that were off against Virginia. He had some throws that were off against Wake Forest the week before that. He had, I think it was Brenningstool wide open in the end zone for a touchdown early in that game against Virginia. And that ball, it must have went 20 yards over his head. He had a couple of bad throws, and then the interception was a terrible decision. But, all in all, we're talking about a guy who just he doesn't resemble anything that we saw in him last year. It's kind of like a night and day difference. He's just experienced so much growth. I think a lot of that's got to do with having more trust in the pass protection, wide receivers being better. But at the end of the day, it's a lot of personal growth too. He just seems so much more comfortable back there in the pocket. His pocket presence is so much better than it was a year ago. He's scanning the field now instead of locking on to one guy. As good as he's been, I think there's still room to be better. I think he's got probably another gear he could hit. We'll see how it plays out, but he is having a really good season. Last time I looked, he was top 5 in QBR in the country. Like you said, 20 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. I think if you'd have told any Clemson fan coming into the season that's where he'd be at this point, every one of them would have took it.
Clemson, Louisville getting together this Saturday night. The game's on ESPN. We got Jason Priester here from the Clemson Insiders. So, of course, we ask that you would like and subscribe right here at the Voice of College Football, but check out Jason's work to get yourself set for the game this weekend. How's the health of this football team?
I think they're in a pretty good spot. They've been fortunate with the injuries this year so far, and we're talking about a team that's been plagued by injuries the past 3 seasons. So, right now they seem to be trending in the right direction. I'm trying to, really the biggest name that's been out the past 2 games is Bryant Wesco. He rolled an ankle there in Tallahassee against Florida State. Probably could have played last week if they really needed him to. I think they just wanted to hold him for an extra week so they could get that week and then the bye week, make sure he was fully ready to go by the time Louisville came to town, because you could see him down on the sideline last Saturday against Virginia. I mean, walking around, no problems, no limp or anything. But he's been the biggest one, and I would fully expect him back this week. And that passing game really hasn't missed a beat without him. TJ Moore's kind of stepped up in a big way since he's been out. But, right now, all in all, pretty healthy. Bye week came at a good times. I think they had a couple of guys that were dinged up and kind of playing through some things, and week off probably helped in that regard.
Clemson, Louisville. And, of course, this has been a pretty important game and a nice little series between these 2 teams where Clemson's obviously had the upper hand, but it's still been a difficult game most times in taking on Louisville. This Cardinals team is giving up all sorts of points and yardage. I saw most of the SMU game. I saw most of the Miami game, and it was not pretty on that side of the ball, which makes for an exciting game. Tyler Shook on the other side is probably one of the better quarterbacks in the country that people don't necessarily know about. They got Isaac Brown, who's a freshman running back, averaging 7.5 yards per carry. So there's a lot of weapons out there for Louisville, but they're going to try to keep their defense off the field.
Yeah, that's a really good offense. I think they're top 20 and top 10 in passing offense, top 20 in scoring offense. So any questions about Wes Goodwin's defense, we're fixing to find out this week, because this will be probably Clemson. I would say Clemson's biggest challenge, from that standpoint since week 1 against Georgia. It's not like, Clemson's blowing these teams out the way they're supposed to be, but none of them have these dynamic offenses, and Louisville's is pretty high-powered. So it's going to be a big challenge for those guys. I'm interested to see this defensive front and see them get after that quarterback a little bit. Again, you got Peter Woods back fully healthy, DeMonte Capehart, who's kind of been playing through a couple of little, or let's just say at least banged up a little bit, should be back at least close to fully healthy. TJ Parker, Trey Williams, those guys, you got to keep him contained, though. Keep him inside the pocket. Don't let him get out and burn you with his legs. But it's also going to be a good test for that secondary because they just haven't seen an offense like this yet. It can put points up in a hurry. On the flip side, though, you just said it, their defense has not been all that great. I could see a scenario in which it plays out, and this might be a track meet and who ends up scoring last wins. But you hope it doesn't come down to that, and this defense can play up to its potential because there's enough. While Clemson's defense has been solid, and you look around at the talent on the field on that side of the ball, I think they should be a little bit better than what they have been. We'll see what they do when Louisville comes to town this week because it's going to be a challenge. That's for sure. That's a good offense.
Vegas is projecting some points, so they've got 61.5. So Clemson by 10.5. So 31-20, 31-21. No, that's only 50 points. Whatever that comes out to. 35-25, something like that. 34-24, something in that range.
40 to 20.
With Clemson making a few stops. What's that?
Yeah. I said 40 to 20 would be 60. So
yeah, but we got to get you a 10-point spread, though.
Yeah, so let's say
35-25.
Yeah, I'm going to venture a guess to say at least one of these teams gets to 40 points.
Okay.
Question is, can Clemson's defense hold Louisville's offense down? Again, I think it's going to be a good test for them. It's been a lot of they've kind of been, I don't want to say bailed out by the offense, but the offense has put up, has gotten out to quick starts and this winning streak for the most part. There hasn't been a whole lot of pressure on this defense. The offense has just been clicking at such a high level. Again, I think it's going to be their biggest challenge since week one. I'm interested to see how they respond.